Welcome to the Career Changemaker podcast, where we focus on owning your career journey and making impact through the work that you do. Whether you're looking to pivot, transition into leadership, or reimagine your career completely, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack career development strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset shifts needed to thrive in your career. Being a career changemaker means taking control and shaping your professional path with intention. I'm your host, lawyer turned career and leadership development specialist, Janine Esbrand. So if you're ready for candid conversations that are going to help you grow, keep listening. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm excited to dive into today's episode where we are talking about career advancing relationships. I am joined by an amazing leader called Bukola. She's Global HR Director at a consulting firm and a powerhouse in navigating career transitions and cultivating what she calls relational prosperity. We're going to be diving into her fascinating career journey, how she's juggled multiple roles, all whilst raising a family, and her game changer relationship building advice is really going to support you if you are somebody who struggles with networking or understanding how to be strategic about how you navigate your way through various relationships in the workplace. You are going to want to lean into this conversation because there are so many gems. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Bukola. Hi, Bukola. So excited to have you here today. Before we dive into all of the goodness, I'd love for you to just take a moment to introduce yourself and tell everyone a bit about you.
Of course. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me. Super excited. My name is Bukola Bayo-Yusuf. Everyone, absolutely everyone calls me B, except my mum, and only when I'm in trouble. So B is good. I am the Global HR Director for Hijack and Struggles. I look after the consulting arm of things, and I have done HR all of my life. I know I look about 16, but I've probably been in HR for, we're going on a couple of decades now, so quite a long time. And I have done everything under the sun in HR. You name it, I've spent time in it. ER, comp, Benz, leadership, talent, early careers, you name it, I've done it. But my bread and butter is being a HR business partner. And I just think some of the time I've spent in the sectors of excellence has just helped me be a better business partner. So that's me.
I love it. You've done so much in HR. And I think HR is one of those terms, right? Or one of those roles that has the umbrella term HR, but not everybody realizes that there's so much variety within the role and you can be doing different things, focusing on different areas. So you've moved around quite a lot. So talk to me about how have you managed to navigate into so many different roles? Because often when people say they've been in a role or profession for 20 years, they've kind of been doing a similar thing, but it's moving around quite a lot within that. So talk to me about how have you navigated that? Has that been intentional on your part? Has it been opportunity just coming up? Like, talk to me a bit about how you've managed the transition.
I think it's been a bit of both. So if you'd asked me this question maybe 5-10 years ago, I would have said it was just luck. But I think now, and you and I were talking about this before, the term relational prosperity is something that has guided me throughout my career. I just didn't know how to articulate it at the start of it. So I did accounting at uni and realised in my first year I didn't want to be an accountant. So it was quite a journey. But HR was one of my electives in my final year and I absolutely loved it. So I went off and did a master's and then I got my very first job in an investment bank. And I spent 6 years at Merrill's and I moved around a lot. And most people, when they look at my CV, probably thought I was on a grad program or something. But the reason why I moved around was because I made really great relationships with the HR leadership team. And through those relationships, when opportunities came up, before I even got onto the job board, they were talking to me about it, going, B, you said you were really interested in this. So-and-so said this in the leadership team meeting. Are you interested? Because I can put in a good word for you. And that's how I moved around. At the time, I thought I was just making friends and doing a good job and putting the hours in. But now I can articulate it as I had really great stakeholders who knew that I was good at my job, but not only knew what I wanted. So I happened to be saying to them, well, I'm keen on X, so I'm really interested in this. And so they could spot opportunities for me in those meetings. Now that I'm longer in the tooth, I know exactly what that is. So I'm more intentional about creating those stakeholder relationships and being really intentional about what my next step is so that I can articulate the opportunities I'm looking for. But I think that's how I've moved around a lot. It's just making sure you do a good job. That's kind of a given. But the further along in your career you are, doing a good job isn't enough. You need to know the right people, and those people need to know what you're looking for as well. And I think that's the bit when I coach people, that's the bit they don't get quite right. They might build up that relationship, but people aren't mind readers. So if you don't tell them what you're looking for, or if you're not open-minded about what that opportunity is, they can't then help, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of how I've moved around.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that, I think that is the missing piece for a lot of people, because people hear a lot about you've got to create relationships and you've got to network, but that piece about telling them what you need or what you want, people don't do, or there's a reluctance to do that, or there's an assumption that they'll just know that that I'm interested, or they'll forward for opportunities. So I love the term that you shared, like relational prosperity. When you first said it to me, I was like, ooh, that's nice. So now that you're able to like articulate it and you realize that actually it's something that you just was naturally doing, it's not something that comes naturally to other people. Some of the things that you would say to others and that you probably share with people that you work with on the coaching to get started with that. Because if you're not an extrovert, or if you're not someone who is used to just navigating new relationships, it's actually quite hard.
Yeah.
You just need to connect with your leaders and then tell them what you want. So what are some ways that you found work with for you, but also for others that same approach?
I think the first bit, and interestingly, when you talked about people don't normally share with others what they want, I think what I found that's been quite surprising is people don't actually know what they want. So I think that's the first, before you know, like career success looks different to everyone. So not everyone's going to wake up in the morning and go, I want to be the CEO. There are jobs that exist now that didn't exist when we were at uni, or when we were thinking, what do I want to be in the future, right? So there's a level of being open-minded, but I think there's also a level of what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What do you want to do? And that's the work that I think is very much within the gift of everyone to work on. So when I coach people, I say to people, you go and write down what career success means to you. Some people are flexible on the role. I don't care what I'm doing, but I want to be done at 5 because, family is more important, or I've got a side hustle I want to focus on. Whatever success looks like to you, figure that out first.
Yes.
And then once you've agreed on that, then the conversation then is, who can support me in getting to where I need to get to? Now, the first foundational block is be good at what you're employed to do now. Even if you don't enjoy it, even if it's the last thing you want to be doing, you need to be good at it, because no one's going to go on a limb for someone who's average or who's okay, right? So that's the first. So know what you want. Yes. Make sure you're good at what you're currently doing. And then you can start to think about, say, for example, so when I started and I went off and did a master's in HR, I had a job in between. And so I knew I wanted to work in HR, but I was doing a job alongside my master's to get by. And it was referrals from recruiters then that supported me to get a job in HR. So had I just been lackadaisical thinking, well, this isn't the job I want to do, and once I graduate, I wouldn't have got that referral. So be good, be present, know where you're going. But then because you know where you're going, you know who's important. So if it's a team you're trying to break into, then you know the manager in that team is someone you should take out for a coffee. Maybe that's someone you need to go out and do something over and above your normal job for. Do you see how it's kind of all connecting? And I know people talk about being introverted and extroverted, and most people will laugh when I say I'm introverted. Like, I'm the life of the party when I know everyone in my house. Yes. With my friends. But if I went into a room, there are people like my brother-in-law, if he walked into a room and knew no one, by the end of the night, people would be gathered around him and he'd be the life of the party. That's not me. I think that skill set is, I don't want to say overrated, but I still think you can be intentional. Even if you're introverted, you can be intentional about building relationships. And I always say to people who say, oh, I'm really introverted and I'm trying to build a relationship with the board, break it down to one by one. You don't have to build up a big presence in front of the board on day one. Make sure you know who the players are and take them out to coffee. People love to talk about themselves. Ask them lots of questions, get to know them, find out what you can connect with them on a social level and build that relationship. And then you can start to talk about different things. So I think there's a step-by-step, know what you want, make sure you're good at your job, make sure you have a great reputation. Then you can identify what opportunities look like. And then when you build those relationships, don't forget to tell them what you're looking for. I'm really interested in X. Be open-minded, because they may say, actually, we think you're good at Y, because you don't know, right? It's feedback that tells you what you're good at. So be open-minded, but you have to come to that conversation owning what you're looking for and what your destination is. So that would be my process.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. It's really about being mindful that you're playing the long game. Often when I speak to people who, or work with clients who are looking to transition, they're very much focused on like the right now and like what I want to do right now. I love what you shared just then around make sure what you are doing is good. Like you're showing up and you're building.
It's a given. Yeah.
Because it's so easy when you are feeling disengaged, like frustrated, for you to kind of take your foot off the gas and be like, well, I don't want to be here anyway. That's impacting your ability to get to where you want to go longer term. And okay. So short-sighted to think that way. And I think it's important for us to be thinking you're managing your career on the whole, right? And so
yeah.
Is important. So I love that you spoke to that. And then from there, it's like, yes, you can build the relationships and doing it in a way that works for you. And I think there's a level of awareness that you need to have about yourself and what works for you to be able to say, actually, I'm not going to be the one working the room, but I can be the one who's going to go out and have the coffees, which is going to create the connection. So that's so good. I love it. I love it. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about also is just the juggle, because you have your day job in HR, you also have a business that you run on the side supporting other people with their careers, and you're a mother of multiple humans.
Yes. So every time I have this conversation, I scare myself, because I think when you're in the thick of it, it's easy to just keep going and going. And then when I'm talking to people, I'm like, actually, B, you are crazy. Like, there's really no need for it to be as hard as it is. But I maintain that when you are passionate about something, you create the time for it, and people will create the time for what's important to them. So I love my job. I've loved working in HR since day one. So that's a given. I think there's a couple of things that I call passion projects. I don't tend to say businesses, even though you could call them that, but in my head, they're passion projects, because if I said business, I think I would just dial it right down, because I'm like, you have no business looking for more businesses. But they are passion projects. So Accelerate Black Futures is something that I created with Winnie alongside a few years ago in the wake of George Floyd. And it was just because I'm a doer and we were venting a lot. And it was like, what can we do? And we realized, because I work in HR, there's so many things that come to me naturally. But from talking to people, I know that it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And so Winnie and I were thinking, how do we bottle some of our experiences, some of our exposures, and share it with other Black professionals? And the idea was to start with young Black professionals, like, grads and things. And then as we started running events, and it was really around practical educational things and also introducing senior Black professionals so people could see Black individuals who were, succeeding in their careers. And then we started to get loads of Black people who've been working 10, 15 years going, oh my God, this is what we needed. And then we started talking to exec recruiters who were thinking about, well, we want to diversify in our talent pool and things like that. So it really kind of pulled from there. But it was really trying to bottle some of those experiences and share that with others. So that was the first passion project. And to give you some context, this started when I was homeschooling two of my children. My last born was maybe 12 months. She's just started sticking her fingers in sockets at the time. And then here's Winnie and I. Winnie's also got two kids. So Accelerate was our sixth baby. We were both homeschooled. Like, it was the craziest time to be thinking about something extra, but I think we were so passionate and people could see that kind of, it started from there. And so that's a real kind of resource. So when I talk to people, I always go, there's loads of, things we put on YouTube, and it's all free. And it's really like LinkedIn presence, stakeholder management. We created a career accelerator program that was 6 weeks. It was just brilliant. There were some gold mines in there. So there's that. And this year, I launched a podcast with three of my girlfriends, which is absolutely phenomenal. We released it for Black History Month. So when I think about all of these extra bits, I'm like, that's why you're tired. That's really...
It's so good to share. The reason why I wanted to just draw that out is I attended an event on Friday and I was on the panel, and one of the people in the audience was saying she has a day job, but she wants to start something on the side. And she was just like, I don't think I have enough time. I don't think I could do it. And I was like, listen, if I can...
You can.
School children, work as a lawyer, launch a business, is possible. And I like to have other people who are holding a lot of things just share that with intention and planning, and it is possible, because I think many people they want to do, but they don't have a possibility model, and they're kind of like, how, and it's like, we don't know how, we just do it.
That's it. Do you know what? I was talking to someone, and funny enough, on Friday, and she's just come back from maternity. It's her third kid, and she was phoning me going, B, you seem to be doing this seamlessly. How are you doing it? I was like, mate, we are all fumbling in the dark here. We are all trying to find the light, what we are doing. And I think that's just that you just waiting for the perfect conditions, it will never come. So it's all about doing it. And sometimes I will drop the ball at certain things, but things are getting done, basically. So I would always encourage anyone to go for it, and you will figure it out as you go along. And it seems seamless on the outside, but there is the pedaling and the running like a headless chicken in the background. But I think that's what makes life rich and fulfilling, when you're, doing lots of different things. It's important to know when it's too much. So I'm a big fan of making sure there's lots of opportunities to rest and recharge. I'm a big fan of well-being, but a big fan of getting lots done as well.
So good, so good. So I wanted to talk to you more about things on the HR side. So as the world is changing so rapidly, and we're moving into a space where everything just feels very uncertain, from your perspective, with your HR hat on, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing, like big ones? What are the big ones that, if there are other HR leaders that are listening, or leaders of organizations, like things that would be top of mind for you that may be helpful for them to be thinking about?
So there's a few that come to mind straight away. One is this post-COVID hybrid world of work. I don't think we've hit the balance yet. So in some organizations, it's hybrid. And this is linked with the other thing, which is culture. How do you keep the stickiness and create that loyalty to the organization if everyone's hybrid? And then you go to the other dimension, where some organizations have said everyone come in 5 days a week, but that's not flexible. So that's this big exam question that I don't quite think anyone's figured out just yet. So those would be the two big things. You walk into a HR room, everyone's talking about how do we get the hybrid situation right? And in getting that right and making sure it's flexible, how do you maintain the culture of the organization, and how does that support people in early careers, people who are junior, who assimilate information by being around, or how do you create that stickiness to the organization if you're just at home with your laptop? So that's a big kind of conversation. I think the other thing is certainly around AI, and what does that mean, and how do we put guardrails around it? I think there are going to be things that come out of the use of AI that we haven't created policies for yet. And so we're definitely thinking, how does that supercharge your business? But for every pro, there's a con. So how do you kind of mitigate against the cons as well? So there are a few things just swirling around, I think, and you walk into a room of HR professionals, they're scratching their heads going, how do we get this right? The other thing is around, this is the world of work where there's the widest generational gaps who have to all work together. And funny enough, I was reading an article this morning that was talking about how the productivity of Gen Zs are being stifled because they're working with millennials who don't get them. And how do and it's really interesting, because we can roll our eyes and blow, but the truth of the matter is we do have a growing percentage of Gen Zs coming into the workplace who are very different from the people who are already in the workforce. They've grown up with social media, they've grown up with AI, they've grown up with everything being a million miles a minute. And there's a little bit of a culture clash going on in the workplace. And we might not want to admit it, but productivity will suffer if we don't come up with how we mitigate some of those tensions. So those would be the kind of things that keep me up at night from a HR perspective.
Yeah. And so those are like challenges. Let's talk about positives in terms of what have you seen or done that you would say is innovative? Because I feel like on a day-to-day, people are doing great things and coming up with ideas and solutions, but we all talk about like, what's our challenges? So share anything done recently, big or small, that you feel like actually that would be a good initiative, I
think so. My current role is really interesting. So I've predominantly worked in banks. And so this is the first time I ventured into professional services, and it's a whole different ballgame, to be honest. Very different makeup. I also work for a consultancy that does HR stuff. So it's like being a doctor to doctors. So I'm on the internal side and they know what good looks like. And so having that in the back of my head is really interesting, supporting them because they know what good looks like. So it's not like with other business, like in banking, you're educating them on this is the people side of things here. These guys know it. But there's also that bit that they know it, but sometimes it doesn't translate to doing it internally. They know it to tell clients, but it's difficult to do what you say. So that's interesting. Some of the things that we've done, which I think has really helped, is from a listening point of view. I think we've dialed that right up. We've gone through lots of change. And I think just listening to people and making sure that your solutions are data-led, I think has been a game changer. I think HR, sometimes we have the habit of doing things for the sake of doing things. Like you get into year end, you have performance reviews, you have this. And sometimes when you listen to people and you hear what the pain points are and you ask the question and you open up the problem statement, and you let that be the basis of your solution. Even if you don't come to a solution that everyone's ticking the box on, the fact that they feel like they've been heard and they've been consulted with and we've gotten to a place that feels like a compromise for them is a game changer. I've seen people not get the outcome they want, but their engagement has gone through the roof because they've been engaged in dialogue. They felt like, I can see how you got to where you got to, and I can see why you couldn't implement do you see what I mean? And I think that's actually been an unlock, is just making sure it's data-led. And herein lies the perfect AI piece. There's so much you can do with data now, accessing it, analyzing it, coming up with solutions for it. So that's been, I think, some of the ways we've been able to make sure we keep people engaged, but our solutions are really data-led.
Yeah, I love that. I'm all about data-driven approaches.
Absolutely.
What are we relying on? So going into 2025, like I'm literally like, how are we at the end of the year already? It's gone like this. But now people are talking about planning, like 2025 planning. I'm like, I haven't started that, but okay.
Yes.
Have you started your 2025 planning, and what's kind of big on the agenda for you from a like people HR perspective?
I want to say I've started, but I'm going to confess that I've only started because it's a continuation from what I should have done for 2024. So I don't want it to seem like, oh, I'm on top of things. No, I was supposed to do this whole vision boarding session for 24. It just never happened. So I'm just kind of getting it done. And we've just ripped it off and put 2025 on it. So that's the plan. I think from a HR perspective, I'm really big on making sure that I'm nudging the business, because everyone's got, like, I'm in HR, but everyone else has got their day job of running the business, making money, serving clients, things like that. And so especially people leaders, their people leader role sometimes can be secondary because their main role is to revenue generate. So my goal is to make sure whatever the people plan is supportive of nudging them to remind them just in time of when those people leadership things need to be done, rather than expecting everyone to have a high level of, intuition and knowing that they need to do X and need to do Y. And so I'm really working on a comms plan and a people plan that embeds that communication in it. So I have we're going to do objectives, and then we're going to have some feedback, and then we're going to remind people about development, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And how do we really upskill the people leader? Because I really think people don't leave jobs, they leave people leaders. I've worked in organizations where it was really tough, but because me and my manager were so, like 5 and 6, really on the same, we just used to whinge about the organization together, but we were in it. That's the stickiness that you want. So for me, I always think working on the people leaders is the fastest way to work on the organization as a whole. Because if they get it right, then everyone's bought in. You have a few really bad eggs and then you have a problem, right? So for me, my people plan is make sure there's a comms plan that nudges, but also how do we upskill the people leaders? Because I really think that's the fastest way to affect culture. So yeah, that's my plan in a nutshell.
I'm here smiling because that's like music to my ears. 'Cause that's what we've been focusing on now, because we're realizing that even from the insight that I've gained from coaching individuals constantly, it is the reason why they're leaving is because of bad management. It's not necessization. It's not necessarily what they do. It's who they're working with. Going into 2025, my focus is really supporting organizations with making sure that people have the skill set to lead.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, which is why they get promoted, right? But like, it's a whole skill set to understand how to manage and lead people. So I love that that's like focus for next year. Okay, so I have a few quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
So first is, what is one tool or app that helps you execute well in your role?
Chat GPT. I'm not the most technical person, but it has been a game changer just in terms of creating a starter for 10, whether it's putting an email together, whether it's trying to find a policy. Like my role is global. I'm not going to know every single policy in the world. I'm not going to, and I do have partners that I lean on, but sometimes time zone does not permit them to be awake when I'm awake. And so I just find that my mantra before was Google is your friend, but it just like you can put a whole scenario. And I had this session with my friend who goes, you can get really detailed, like Google's just like a sentence or a word. Whereas I find with this, it's like, here are questions that you might want to know before you answer me. And you can put a whole essay in and it will spit like a whole bunch of things. Now I'm used with caution, garbage in, garbage out. But like I say, it's a starter for 10 and it just makes that process faster. I hate a blank screen. So for me to actually start with something and then I can tailor it and tweak it definitely works for me. So it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, so good. I've been using it a lot more recently. And the other day I asked it to summarize something. I think it was podcasts. I wanted to like summarize all the podcast episodes and create a library. And then after it did summary, it said, do you want me to create a PDF? And I was like, you can create.
Yes, please.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I put it and I was waiting to see what it would do. And in a PDF, I was like, okay, you are blowing my mind, ChatGPT.
It's crazy. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like having a robotic PA that never sleeps. Yeah. And it's just constant. Yeah, really good.
It remembers stuff as well, like from what you said before. So yeah, it is amazing. I love it. As we mentioned earlier, you are holding a lot of different things, wearing different hats. So what is your favorite way to de-stress, unwind?
Music. I've been known to bust a praise dance in the middle of the house just because my brain is about to fry. So my kids are used to finding mummy in the living room, jumping up and down. But that's gym's not for me. But I can put some music on and throw down, and it just helps just put things in perspective. COVID really helped me put things in perspective in terms of what's important. And so I put on the music, and it's like, look, there will always be work. There will always be balls to drop. What's important? I'm trying to kind of refocus and make sure whatever's kind of seeming like the biggest thing in the world finds its place. And it's normally not as big as I think it is. But music is definitely a game changer for me.
Love that. I love it. I do love a dance. I'm always dancing around the kitchen. So what is the name of a leader that you admire?
I know this is the part where I'm supposed to say something like Michelle Obama or blah, blah, blah. I'm going to bring it home. That's what people expect, but I'm going to bring it home and talk about my sis, Winnie. I met Winnie, funny enough, we're talking this morning, we're trying to figure out how long we've known each other. It's like 9 years going on 50. That's just how close we are. And she's a leader I admire because of her level of integrity. Winnie doesn't shut down. It's not like, okay, I've clocked off of work. And so now she is proper through and through. She works in DEI and it's a tough gig. She's an empath. She's extremely strategically minded. Like even if you talk to her about your marriage, she's looking for a strategy or some sort of system to put it into, which is brilliant. So she's one that I really admire, her leadership and how inclusive and empathetic and strategic. And that's my girl crush for the day is Winnie.
What's her last name in case anyone's like,
Winnie Annan Forson. Yeah, if you want to follow her, Winnie Annan Forson. So she's a quarter of the 4D podcast. So she was one of the girls I did the podcast with, and she's just absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And my last question here is there a quote, a mantra, a saying that either you live by or that is one that you like to quote a lot?
This is where my Nigerian roots come out. And I say this maybe a couple of times a day. I won't take paracetamol for someone else's headache. That's been my mantra. I say that because I coach a lot of people and I get incensed on behalf of people. I'm like, oh, I can see your potential. I just need you to do X. And I get really hot and bothered, and they're not bothered.
You're not bothered. Yes. Oh my gosh.
I'm like, why am I here taking painkillers? It's your head that's hurting. It's not mine. So I say it a lot. I say it to my kids as well, because that's just mom life. But I think in the context of work, it's like just trying to prioritize. I can coach and I'm an empath and I can support, but I don't want it to get to the point where I'm now suffering, but the person that I'm doing it on behalf of is unbothered, if that makes sense. So that's my mantra.
I love that. The part of the reason why I have this question in when I ask guests this question is for me, because I'm like, oh, I like these things. I hold on to these things. I'm like, right, I'm taking that one. So as we wrap up, this has been so good, so many gems, and I know that it's going to help so many people. What is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think we've talked about relational prosperity. I really think if there was one thing I would love to say over and over again is find out what you want. Like it's shocking just when you talk to people how little they are in terms of clarity as to what they want or where they're going. Funny enough, Winnie and I were talking, I watched something on Instagram and this guy was talking about a math problem and he was saying 2 + 2 = 4. What is your 4? What is your destination? Because the how is irrelevant because there's lots of ways to get to 4. There's 2 + 2, but there's also 5 - 1. There's 2 times. There's so many ways that can happen. And that's that open-mindedness I was talking about. But be clear as to what your 4 is. And a lot of people aren't clear on that. And so if there was one thing, like if it was disregard anything I've said in the last however many minutes, find out what your 4 is because, you know, the quote says, if you don't know where you're going, anywhere is fine. So you just keep bumbling around. So everyone needs to, and I say that to myself as well, the whole thought around planning for 2025 and doing a vision board has to start from what's your 4. And then you work backwards from there. So if there was anything I was going to leave with people, and finding out your 4 is within your gifts. That's not anyone else's job. People can give you feedback as to what they think you're good at or what you need to work on, blah, blah. But you are ultimately the one who is going to wear the shoe of what that 4 looks like. And so if there was anything I could impress upon people, over Christmas, everyone gets that lull where they wake up and they don't know what day in the week it is and they've got some time off. Just take some time out and be intentional and think about what's my 4. And then you can spend the rest of your life figuring out the equation of how you get there. But I think we need to spend time thinking about what that should be. Yeah, that's the only thing I'd add.
I love it. This is so good. So if people want to find you, learn more about you, obviously they can check you out on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else that they should go? Or is that the main place?
LinkedIn is the main place. I recently joined Instagram. Like I said, I'm not techie, so I joined Instagram, I think maybe 2 more because of Accelerate and then the podcast as well. So I am on Instagram as well. And then obviously there's the website for Accelerate Black Futures, or it's also on YouTube. And so if you're looking for anything around performance management, supporting your career, getting promoted, finding a job, there's loads of videos on YouTube that we've done from Accelerate. So you'd be able to find that. And Accelerate, for people who are probably thinking, she's saying Accelerate, but just doesn't know how to pronounce it. It's a mix of excellent and accelerate, hence the word accelerate. So that was the thinking behind that. So yeah, you can check me out there as well.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we will make sure that we link to all of those in the show notes. I just want to say thank you so much for carving out time out of your busy schedule to come and speak to us today. It's been awesome. So thank you, Bukola.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me. And well done for all the stuff you're doing on careers. I think people need this stuff. They just don't know they need it, but they do. So thank you.
That was an incredible conversation. I just loved what Bukola shared about the concept of relational prosperity and those tips that she gave us around being intentional about your career advancement and blending your passion projects with your demanding career. There's just so much juice in this conversation. So I hope you were taking notes. If you weren't, you can always go back and listen again. But if you want to connect with Bukola and you want to learn more about her and the work that she does, First place to go is LinkedIn. Connect with her over there. You can also check her out on Instagram and look up the resources that she talked about on Accelerate Black Futures on their website and their YouTube channel. There's so much that they have shared that can really support you as you move forward in your career. So be sure to check that out. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Career Changemaker podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with someone that you know, because sharing is caring. Also, subscribe so you get notified whenever we have new episodes drop, and leave us a rating and review. I'm going to be sure to give listener shout outs to those of you who take the time to leave a review. So please go ahead and do that. And until next time, keep making bold career moves and creating your own version of career success. See you soon. Bye.